Imagine for a moment a city not built of brick and steel, but of a new, insidious material, pleasure. A city where every street corner offers a fleeting thrill, every building is a monument to convenience, and every citizen carries the weight of a silent, gnawing emptiness. This isn't a dystopian novel from a bygone era. This is the world we inhabit. You and I, we are its architects and its unwitting prisoners. We've been told that freedom is the ability to choose, to consume, to be entertained without limit. But what if this very freedom is our cage? What if the constant pursuit of pleasure is the most sophisticated form of control ever devised? A control that doesn't require chains or guards, but simply a screen, a remote, and a constant low-level buzz of dopamine. We are living through a grand, unconscious experiment. The question is, what happens to the human soul when every need, every desire, every flicker of boredom is immediately anesthetized? Think about the small trades we make every day, the silent bargains that define our lives. Consider the story of Elias. Elias returns home from a long, draining day at the tech company he works for. His son, Leo, a curious boy of 10, rushes to him, eager to share the triumph of a science project, the frustration of a playground squabble, the small yet momentous events of his day. But the tablet, a gleaming totem of convenience, is already in Elias's hand. Its polished surface promises an escape into a world of curated news feeds, viral videos, and endless passive distraction. The decision is made in a microsecond. The father chooses the path of least resistance, the digital oasis that requires no emotional labor. Leo learns a devastating lesson. His voice, his experience, is secondary to the glowing screen. This scene isn't a failure of love, but a failure of presence, a slow, subtle erosion of the very fabric that holds us together. This erosion isn't limited to the family unit. It permeates every aspect of our existence. We are a generation of emotional hermits, connected by fleeting digital signals, but profoundly disconnected from one another. We live with parents we barely know, partners we treat as roommates, and friends we interact with only through the sterile exchange of memes and likes. Real human relationships, the kind that forge meaning and resilience, require a different currency: vulnerability, patience, and a willingness to sit with discomfort. They demand that we navigate conflicts, endure moments of awkward silence, and face the uncomfortable truths that arise when two authentic souls collide. But our brains, rewired by the constant jolt of immediate pleasure, reject this investment. The delayed gratification of a meaningful connection feels like a burden, an unnecessary chore. We crave the frictionless pleasure of a swipe, a click, a fleeting hit of validation. This psychological atrophy has a far more sinister consequence. As we lose our ability to form deep bonds with others, we lose the capacity to know ourselves. A person disconnected from their inner world becomes an easy target. When we can no longer tolerate the friction of a challenging relationship, we project our weakness outward. The friend who pushes us to be better becomes toxic. The partner who demands emotional honesty is too much work. We build a fortress of self-righteousness, labeling anyone who threatens our comfort zone as a problem. This defense mechanism, born from a desire to protect a fragile ego, ultimately suffocates our potential for growth. Because growth, true growth, is born from discomfort. It is forged in the crucible of difficult conversations and challenging circumstances. By labeling these opportunities as problems, we become prisoners of our own making, living in increasingly smaller, more predictable bubbles. We surround ourselves with people and content that only confirm our existing biases, trading a life of genuine discovery for a shallow existence of perpetual affirmation. Think about your daily ritual. How much of your day is spent engaging with screens, products, and algorithmic feeds versus being present with a loved one, lost in quiet reflection, or simply sitting in silence? The equation is brutally honest. We are trading people for things, authentic presence for manufactured stimuli, and genuine bonds for shallow consumption. Things are easier to deal with than people. A product will never disappoint you in the way a human being can. An algorithmically curated streaming show will never ask you to confront your contradictions. A social media feed will never force you to sit with your own anxiety. This ease, however, comes at an unbearable price. It has made us emotionally brittle, incapable of navigating the beautiful, messy complexity of human existence. We are a society of adults with the emotional resilience of children, people who know how to buy and consume, but have forgotten how to love, to forgive, and to build something that transcends their own immediate desires. This is where the grand deception lies. While we have been given the illusion of boundless choice, hundreds of TV channels, thousands of streaming shows, a seemingly infinite array of products and brands, the real, meaningful choices of life have become increasingly restricted. We can choose between countless soda flavors, but we are sold a single monolithic philosophy: consume, be entertained, and do not question. This isn't freedom, it's a meticulously crafted illusion. The true power of modern control doesn't lie in denying us choices, but in redefining what choice means. Freedom is no longer the ability to choose your destiny, it is the ability to choose between products. It is no longer the power to think for yourself, it is the power to express your consumption preferences. It is no longer the possibility of transforming the world, it is the possibility of personalizing your experience within a world others have already created for you. And most of us willingly accept this redefinition. Why? Because it's easier. It's easier to choose between phone models than it is to choose between life philosophies. It's more comfortable to express our individuality through purchases than through courageous actions. It's safer to rebel by buying alternative clothing than by questioning the actual systems of power that govern our lives. But this convenience is a mirage. It systematically atrophies our capacity to deal with the pain that is an inevitable part of being human. When the unavoidable tragedies of life strike, the loss of a loved one, the ending of a relationship, the failure of a dream, we are left emotionally bankrupt without the tools to process our pain. We resort to the only strategy we know: more pleasure, more consumption, more distraction. But this anesthetic only postpones the inevitable, and pain, when postponed, always returns with a vengeance. This is the great silent paradox of our time. We have more access to pleasure and entertainment than any generation in history, yet we are also the most anxious, depressed, and existentially lost. The problem isn't pleasure itself. It's when pleasure becomes an escape, a fortress we build to avoid the very things that make life meaningful. The question isn't whether we can have fun. It's whether we can stay serious long enough to build a life worth living. It's whether we have the courage to choose present discomfort for the sake of future fulfillment. But how do we break free from a system that uses our own desires against us? How do we reclaim our inner world in an age of constant external stimulation? And what does it truly mean to live with courage in a culture that rewards comfort above all else? How do we break free from a system that uses our own desires against us? How do we reclaim our inner world in an age of constant external stimulation? And what does it truly mean to live with courage in a culture that rewards comfort above all else? The answer lies not in a grand revolution, but in a silent, personal rebellion. It begins with the simple act of turning off the noise. Observe your own behavior for just one day. How many times can you tolerate total silence? No music, no podcast, no video, nothing but the company of your own thoughts. For most people, the answer is a jarring, almost terrifying never. We have developed a profound phobia of boredom, of stillness, of our own inner landscape. And this isn't an accident. It is, perhaps, the most brilliant and sinister strategy of modern control. For it is in the silence that the inconvenient questions arise. It's in the quiet that we might realize our life is headed in the wrong direction, that our relationships are superficial, that our frantic pursuit of external validation is a hollow substitute for genuine meaning. The system understands this implicitly. That's why it offers us a constant, curated stream of entertainment to prevent these dangerous discoveries from ever taking hold. A person who cannot be alone with themselves is a person who doesn't know their own values, their own desires, their own limits. And a person who doesn't know themselves is a person profoundly easy to influence and manipulate. You just need to discover which buttons to press to make them dance to whatever tune you choose. Herein lies the true power of the modern algorithm. It doesn't simply show us what we want to see, it shapes what we want to want. It identifies the subtle insecurities we didn't even know we had and amplifies them with perfectly targeted content. It detects our moments of emotional vulnerability and bombards us with stimuli designed to alter our mood. It maps our behavioral patterns and uses them to predict and influence our next actions. The result is that even our most intimate desires are no longer truly our own. That sudden, inexplicable urge to buy a specific product, that magnetic pull toward a particular type of content, that abrupt shift in mood when you open a social media app, none of it is accidental. Every experience is meticulously engineered to produce a desired outcome. This is a form of mind control more sophisticated than anything George Orwell ever imagined, because it doesn't just control what we think, it controls what we want to think. It doesn't just restrict information, it shapes our very desire for information. It doesn't punish disobedience, it rewards obedience in ways so pleasurable that we don't even realize we're obeying. And perhaps the cruelest manipulation of all is how the system convinces us that all this distraction is necessary for our mental health. We are told we need constant entertainment to relax, that we deserve instant pleasure as compensation for the stress of modern life, that any suggestion to limit these pleasures is a form of unnecessary self-punishment. But here is the truth that no one wants to face. Much of the stress of modern life is created by this very cycle of pleasure and emptiness. We exhaust ourselves working at jobs that have no meaning to buy things we don't need, to impress people we don't know. Then we seek temporary relief in pleasures that ultimately only increase our existential emptiness. And instead of questioning this absurd cycle, we seek out even more pleasure to numb the pain caused by the previous pleasure. It is like drinking alcohol to cure a hangover. It provides a temporary fix, but makes the underlying problem worse in the long run. In this case, we aren't just destroying our livers, we are destroying our capacity to find real meaning in our lives. The silencing of existential anguish is, in many ways, the greatest crime we commit against ourselves, because it is precisely this anguish that motivates us to seek growth, meaning, and transcendence. It is the internal compass that tells us when we are living out of alignment with our deepest values. When we anesthetize this anguish with constant pleasure, we lose our moral navigation system. We become lost, not knowing if we're headed in the right or wrong direction, because we have eliminated the very discomfort that naturally arises when we are off course. It's like removing pain from a body. Without it, we don't realize something is terribly wrong until it's too late. Nowhere is this more evident than in the realm of human relationships. We have transformed even romantic love into a product of fast consumption. Dating apps present us with an endless menu of options, and at the first sign of difficulty, conflict, or simple boredom, we move on to the next option. The result is a generation that no longer understands what true love is, because they have never stayed in a relationship long enough to find out. Love is not the initial feeling of euphoria that we feel when we meet someone new. That is merely attraction combined with the thrill of novelty. Real love is what emerges after that euphoria fades. It is the conscious choice to continue investing in someone, even when it is difficult, and even when you don't feel like it. But people addicted to immediate pleasure confuse the absence of initial euphoria with the absence of love. When a relationship moves from the phase of passionate infatuation into the phase of genuine building, they interpret this as a sign that they have chosen the wrong person. And so they leave in search of the next dose of euphoria, never discovering the deep satisfaction that comes from building something lasting with another human being. This is a personal tragedy and a societal one. Personal, because these individuals never experience the profound happiness that comes from authentic connection. Social, because a society of people incapable of forming lasting bonds is a fragile society without the cohesion and shared values that transcend immediate individual interest. The modern economy profits from this very fragility. Emotionally unstable people buy more because they seek in consumption what they cannot find in relationships. People without deep bonds are more vulnerable to advertising because they don't have real communities to offer alternative perspectives. The market has transformed our inability to love into a profit opportunity, and it has done so in such a subtle way that we don't even notice. It doesn't just sell products to people who can't relate. It creates a culture that actively sabotages people's ability to relate, so they depend more on consumption as an emotional substitute. This is the level of sophistication of modern economic control. It doesn't just exploit our weaknesses, it creates the weaknesses it then exploits. It doesn't just offer solutions to our problems, it generates the problems for which it then sells solutions. It is a closed system of creating and satisfying artificial needs. This system finds its most visible manifestation in our relationship with courage. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is the ability to act despite fear. It is the skill to choose present discomfort when we know it will lead us to a better place in the future. It is the inner strength that allows us to break destructive patterns, even when that break is painful. But a life dedicated to avoiding all discomfort atrophies our courage like a muscle that is never exercised. Every time we choose easy pleasure over difficult growth, we weaken our capacity to make courageous choices in the future. Every time we avoid a difficult conversation, a challenging project, or a necessary change, we become less capable of facing the next challenges that life will inevitably present. And the system relies on this growing cowardice. A populace without courage does not make revolutions. It does not question authority. It does not create alternatives to the status quo. It remains stuck in jobs they hate, in relationships that don't work, in lives that have no meaning, because they lack the courage to face the temporary discomfort that any significant change requires. This is the cruelest irony of our era. A generation that has more formal freedom than any other in history is less capable of using that freedom to create meaningful changes in their own lives. We have fewer legal restrictions, fewer social prejudices, and more economic opportunities than our ancestors. But we also have less courage, less discipline, and less capacity to tolerate discomfort in exchange for long-term growth. The price of authentic freedom isn't just constant vigilance against external tyrants, as George Orwell warned. It is also a constant resistance against the internal tyrant that prefers pleasure over growth, comfort over courage, and ease over meaning. It is the daily choice to face discomfort when we know it will lead us to a better place. Real freedom isn't having the right to do what we want. It is having the inner strength to want what is worthwhile. It is not being able to choose between 1,000 superficial options. It is having the wisdom to identify the few choices that truly matter. It is not the ability to avoid suffering. It is the skill to find meaning in inevitable suffering. And that is why pleasure has become the most effective weapon against freedom. It offers us the illusion that we are choosing our own happiness, when in reality, we are choosing our own prison. It convinces us that we deserve immediate gratification, when in truth, we deserve something much greater. The deep satisfaction that comes from building a life aligned with our highest values. The problem is not pleasure itself. The problem is when we transform pleasure into an escape instead of a healthy part of a balanced life. The problem isn't a game, a movie, or an app. The problem is when we use these things to systematically avoid everything that challenges us, everything that makes us grow, everything that connects us deeply with other human beings. A balanced life has room for both pleasure and growth, for both comfort and challenge, for both relaxation and meaningful effort. But when pleasure completely dominates, when it becomes our only strategy for dealing with existence, it stops being liberation and becomes slavery. The true rebellion of our era isn't seeking more pleasure, it's developing the inner strength to choose less pleasure when necessary. It's not having more entertainment options, it's having the courage to be bored long enough to discover what truly matters to you. It's not avoiding all suffering, it's learning to find meaning in the suffering that is worthwhile. Because in the end, the question isn't whether you have the right to seek pleasure. It's whether you have the courage to seek something greater than pleasure. The question isn't whether you can have fun. It's whether you can stay serious long enough to build a life worth living. The question isn't whether you have access to infinite entertainment. It's whether you have access to your own soul beneath all the layers of distraction you've accumulated over the years. And this might be the most important question of all. When all the screens are off, when all the noise stops, when you are alone with your own thoughts in a silent room, who do you find there? Real freedom begins with the courage to question yourself, and even more importantly, with the courage to live the answer even if it is initially uncomfortable. Because only when we know who we really are beneath all the masks and distractions can we begin to build a life that is authentically ours. And only a life that is authentically ours can be truly free. We've explored the silent prison built from our addiction to pleasure, the emotional atrophy that leaves us vulnerable, and the subtle machinery that co-opts our desires against us. The grand tragedy is not that the system has taken our freedom, but that we have happily handed it over. But the very nature of this problem contains its own solution. The cage is not built with external walls, but with internal habits. And the key to unlock it is not a revolution in the streets, but a rebellion in the mind. The journey back to authentic freedom is a return journey to the self. It is a path of deliberate, conscious effort in a world that sells effortless consumption. It is a reclamation of our inner life in an age of constant external demands. This is not just another video about discipline. This is about understanding discipline as the ultimate act of self-love and the single most powerful form of resistance we have. The first step in this rebellion is to confront the phobia of silence. We must actively seek out moments of stillness, not as an escape from the world, but as a return to our own center. Find a quiet room, turn off all screens, and simply sit. For many, the initial minutes will be pure agony. The mind, addicted to a constant stream of information, will scream for a distraction. It will throw up 1,000 trivial thoughts, a to-do list, a forgotten email, the lyrics to a song you hate. This is the inner tyrant, the part of you that has been trained to fear boredom and avoid reflection. This is the discomfort we have been systematically avoiding, the very pain that holds the key to our growth. By sitting with this feeling, we are not just enduring, we are exercising a muscle that has withered away. We are telling our own brain, in the most profound way possible, that we are in control, that we, the conscious self, are more powerful than the conditioned urge for distraction. In the silence, the questions we have been running from begin to surface. Am I living a life that reflects my values? What truly matters to me beyond a momentary pleasure? Who am I when stripped of my consumption habits and digital identity? These are not easy questions, and they don't come with easy answers, but their emergence is the first sign of a soul awakening from its long narcotic slumber. The second step is to embrace discomfort as the raw material for a meaningful life. In our quest for comfort, we have systematically eliminated all the small frictions that once built our resilience. We use apps to avoid human interaction. We order food to bypass the effort of cooking, and we consume perfectly curated content instead of engaging in the challenging process of creating our own. But the very things that give life its texture and depth are forged in discomfort. A deep friendship is not the result of a series of pleasantries. It is born from navigating disagreements and supporting one another through moments of profound pain. A meaningful career is not built on a series of easy tasks. It is the culmination of years of hard work, frustration, and the courage to persist in the face of failure. By consciously choosing to engage with discomfort, we rebuild our emotional and psychological fortitude. Start small. Choose a project that challenges you. Initiate a difficult conversation you've been avoiding. Set aside time to work on something that requires sustained focus and offers no immediate reward. Each of these small acts is a tiny rebellion against the culture of ease. They are the daily workouts for a soul that has been allowed to become soft and fragile. This path of disciplined courage extends to our relationships. We must consciously choose to build the bonds that truly nourish us. And that means moving beyond the transactional surface of modern connection. True love, as we've discussed, isn't an emotion, it's a decision. It is the conscious choice to be present, to listen, and to invest in another human being, even when they are not offering you an immediate, pleasurable return. This means putting down the phone when a loved one is speaking. It means asking difficult, meaningful questions and having the patience to listen to the answers. It means being willing to sit with someone else's pain without trying to fix it or distract from it. These acts are the antithesis of the modern consumption model of relationships. They demand a vulnerability that is profoundly uncomfortable, but they are the only way to build something that transcends our own immediate desires. In an era where dating has become a game of endless swipes and friendship has been reduced to a stream of likes and comments, the commitment to a difficult, authentic bond is perhaps the most radical act of all. Now, you may ask, what about pleasure? Is it the enemy? Is a life of constant effort and discomfort the only path to a meaningful existence? Absolutely not. Pleasure itself is not the problem. The problem is when pleasure becomes our only strategy for dealing with the complex reality of being alive. Think of it like this. A bodybuilder works tirelessly in the gym, enduring pain and discomfort to build strength. The rest he takes is not an escape from his effort. It is a necessary part of the process of growth. His body, in a state of rest, recovers and rebuilds. Similarly, when we earn our pleasure through meaningful effort, it becomes a reward, not an anesthetic. The satisfaction of a well-earned break after a challenging project is deeper and more lasting than a constant low-level stream of entertainment. The joy of a shared meal with a loved one you've truly invested in is infinitely more satisfying than the fleeting validation of a social media post. The goal is not to eliminate pleasure, but to realign our relationship with it, transforming it from a master we obey into a servant that supports our growth. This is a profound philosophical shift. It is the move from a consumer mindset to a creator mindset. A consumer seeks to be entertained, to have their desires met, to have their life made easier. A creator seeks to build, to contribute, and to overcome challenges. The greatest joy in life comes not from passive consumption, but from active creation. Whether it's the creation of a piece of art, the building of a business, the raising of a family, or the forging of a resilient self, the deepest satisfaction comes from looking at something you have built and knowing that it came from your own effort and courage. The ancient philosophers, from the Stoics to the existentialists, all understood this. They knew that a life of meaning was not about avoiding suffering, but about finding meaning in suffering. They knew that true freedom was not the ability to do whatever we want, but the ability to do what is right, what is worthwhile, what is aligned with our highest self. In a culture that promises happiness through consumption and comfort, this ancient wisdom is the most powerful counter-narrative we have. It is a return to a fundamental truth of human psychology, that we are not passive pleasure seekers, but active meaning makers. The very act of choosing to suffer for a worthwhile purpose is what gives life its profound beauty and dignity. Think back to the story of Elias and his son, Leo. The problem was not that Elias was a bad father. It was that he was a man trapped in the illusion of ease. His unconscious choice to pick up the tablet was a choice for convenience over connection. The rebellion for Elias, and for all of us, is to choose the opposite. It is to put down the screen and say, "Tell me about your day, son." It is to choose the difficult, awkward, and vulnerable conversation. It is to accept that this choice may not bring a quick dopamine hit, but it will build something far more precious, a deep, authentic bond. This is the difference between a life that is merely comfortable and a life that is truly free. Real freedom is not having the right to do what we want. It is having the inner strength to want what is worthwhile. It is not being able to choose between 1,000 superficial options, but having the wisdom to identify the few choices that truly matter. It is not the ability to avoid pain, but the skill to find meaning in the pain that is unavoidable. And perhaps that is the ultimate goal of the silent rebellion, to build a life that is so rich in meaning and purpose that the endless temptations of fleeting pleasure lose their power over us. When you are deeply engaged in something you care about, when you are building something you are proud of, when you are connected to people you love, the allure of constant distraction begins to fade. This is the promise of this difficult path. It won't be easy. It will require you to swim against the current of an entire culture. It will demand that you give up immediate pleasure for long-term satisfaction. But the reward is a life that is authentically yours, a life of courage, meaning, and true fulfillment. The fight for freedom is not out there in the world. It is here within each one of us. And it is a fight we can start winning, one small act of conscious discipline at a time. The choice is yours.